Hey guys, this is Robert Hamm with Robert Hamm Photography, coming at you again with another tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about Lightroom 6.2 on Windows 10 being used on the Microsoft Surface Pro 3. This is an important video because the last time I did one of these was about 6 months ago, and it was Lightroom 6 or 5.9 being used on the Surface Pro 3 with Windows 8. So this kind of shows you just a little bit different right here. One thing I'll have to tell you that Adobe has gone ahead and done is issued an apology for this import dialog. You can go to blogs.adobe.com to read a little bit more about it. Notice that I pushed the import button a few moments ago, and it's still sitting back and thinking about whether or not it actually wants to bring this up. And this is particularly what people are upset about. 6.2, 6.1 brought in this new import, which should have slimmed things down and made it easier, but the reality is that it did not. Right here, these are just 24-bit RAW files that are trying to pop up. They're around 25 megabytes. Excuse me, not 24-bit, 8-bit RAW files. They're about 25 megabytes. They're from my DJI Phantom 3 Pro. They're DNG files, a file format that Adobe reads easily. These actually happen to be on the SD card, the micro SD that's in here, and notice that it's taking it forever to just load these up. And that's particularly one of the things that is the big issue with the new import dialog. It's just slow. It winds everything down to a crunch. I'm going to go ahead and cancel this for us right here. We're going to be working with this series of photos today. I've gone ahead and imported these images and applied a default preset just to auto-tone. And that's very important. Since we're talking about batch processing, you want your images to be as close to similar from one to the other as possible. In fact, you really, when we look at one of these photos, you might say, there's nothing particularly remarkable about this image. Well, that's where we'd be wrong. We want a relatively flat image, nothing too contrasty, nothing too vibrant. We're going to work in RAW. We can see we've got a nice tone curve. Even our original import, when we come over here, is going to have that nice curve. So you're going to see that the curve is just a little bit more sharp, and it's over to the left. And when we're able to expose to the right, just with the autotone, when you can get a nice bell curve with that autotone, you're in the ballpark for being able to do a great job with your batch processing. I'm going to switch back over here to the library module in order to show in loop view or grid view right here that in each of the areas you can see the exposure is very similar. Okay, and that's really what we're looking for in order to make your batch processing of images as efficient and as effective as possible. If your images are all over the place, then your batch processing is not going to be as successful, and that's going to be because you're not going to have as consistent of an exposure, of a base exposure, to work with over all of your images. Now, it is true that the exposures from here are different than the exposures that we saw in the very front, and that's to be expected because they're in different locations. So when we batch process one of these, because they're similar, we'll be able to apply some of the same processing to all of them, and you're going to find that out here in just a second. So let's move back over to the develop module, and let's talk about presets. Lots of times people want to come and apply a preset. Problem is we don't understand how presets work. Most of the time preset applies to the entire image. But we don't want to apply things to the entire image, as you're going to see in just a second. So I'm going to begin working on this particular image right here. I like it. It's a cute image, but it doesn't even matter that maybe their faces aren't exactly where I want them right this second. What matters is that the exposure and everything is how I'd like. So as I move, I'm just going to use my surface pen to kind of bring out my shadows a little bit, bring the highlights down some. I'm going to move this curve just a little bit right there. I'm going to add a little bit of negative clarity. I usually like to go about -12. And then I'm going to come down here and add some noise reduction. I usually do about 15. Okay? All of my images get this applied straight up front. We're going to come and pull some different profiles. Now, I shoot with Fuji, and Fuji and Adobe have worked together in order to create some really nice film simulations, the same that you'd see in some of their JPEGs, but I can now apply these to the RAW. Velvia is going to give me a real reddish image, and that's great for summertime, not so great for the fall. Especially if we look at our family here, we notice that they've become red, and they're not red. We need to pull that back some, and I find that I like Astia. For that, we've got a much more natural image, and as such, we can come up here and apply just a little bit of vibrancy. I usually do about 15 or 12, somewhere in there, and maybe a little bit of saturation, but not much. So now we've got a much nicer image. since we've come down here, we're going to actually come in again, once again, and I want to bring their faces out. So I'm going to use my luminance slider right here, and to make their faces come up in brightness some. So instead of using the lighten or the dodge tool, I'm going to use luminance. Now I want you to watch their faces. Okay. Now it is true that the entire image comes up some, but their faces come up quite a bit as well. So here is this couple and this family. We're going to be adjusting luminance of our red, our orange. Yellow is going to come back. I'm going to bring that down just a little bit because I want the leaves to come down. And I think that we're good, but our shadows, you'll notice, sometimes are blue. So we're going to bring the luminance of our blue up some so we can put the white in their shirts just a little bit more. If you really wanted to adjust, you could also adjust the purple and magenta, but I think I'm going to leave those straight where they are. Now that we've come here, we're going to adjust just a little bit more. I want to come in and look some contrast and bring some contrast up some. A little bit too much. I think that's a little bit too much. I think I like it right there a little bit more. And then finally, I'm going to look at my whites one more time. Now you can use your whites to affect your exposure instead of using the actual exposure to affect it. So what that does is that brings in less noise, because when you use your exposure, you're just amping up digital gain, and that brings in noise, and it changes globally. Now, when we bring this back down, when we use our white slider, we're not affecting anything globally, we're just affecting the whites or the highlights in order to get particularly what we want. So we're able to create an exposure compensation that does not use a global adjustment, it just uses a local adjustment. And here I'm just talking about the white tones. So I like this quite a bit. I think there's one other thing I want to do. I want to come down here and look at this blue calibration right here. And this is very important. I'm going to change the hue of the blues. And what you're going to see is that's going to make the oranges and the greens pop quite a bit more. So here we just decide where we like it the most. And I think I like it right up here some, orange. And then we can saturate or undersaturate that. Okay, so if you want to use this blue shading, you need to make sure that as you use it, that you're just watching, because this blue can get really crazy. You can make people turn purple. Once again, all the adjustments that we do, we want to do in moderation. You can also adjust your greens here, kind of make it look more fall or look a little bit more summery. This is fall, so we're going to bring the greens out and slide the saturation of them down to give just a slight little bit of a grayness to it. Great. So I like the image where we are. The last thing that I'm going to do is come over here and apply just what I like, a little bit of vignetting. I usually come back and bring it in just a little bit. And there we go. Now, if we wanted to look and see where we started out with, here was our import. Okay. Here is our auto tone. Okay. And now here is our complete. Boom. Okay, so we've been able to do quite a bit. No cropping, nice position and everything. So that is currently our That's our preset. So we're going to Command A to select all, or Control A. Now that it's select all, we see that sync popped up. Now here's the difference. When you create a preset, it generally applies to everything. Notice how every single box is applied except for crop. Okay. Now many presets won't apply to crop, but this is the same dialog that you'll use to create a preset. But I don't think there's a need to create a preset and then save it, because you can create one for each project, and it's taken us less than 5 minutes to do so right now. So in 5 minutes, we've created a custom preset that we can use for this particular process or project. And actually, we don't even save it anywhere, because we're going to sync this across all of the photos so that we begin to have this adjustment. So the first thing I want to do is I want to leave the white balance alone. Okay? Because each area is going to have its own white balance. Remember, I shot in many different areas, and because of that, I want it left alone. Okay. The next thing is exposure. Remember, I liked my exposure. I shot each area for its own exposure so that each area would have an exposure unique to it. And the photos in those subsequent sets were unique to that area. If you click exposure right here, then it's going to change all of the exposure to match this one right here, and you don't want that. I want to maintain my highlights. Actually, I don't even want to maintain. I want to maintain them. I want to change the shadows and let the white clipping stay the same. So everybody gets, so all of these images, the only thing that I'm going to adjust here is how the shadows have been adjusted to brighten and bring out the shadows. And actually, now that I think about it, I do want to maintain that contrast across. The tone curve, the clarity, I want that changed, because remember, I added some negative clarity, some noise reduction. Remember, I added some noise reduction. I like that on all of my images. I definitely don't need it here. I think it just adds a smooth uniqueness to it. that I enjoy. The color saturation and vibrance, I want to keep that there. The treatment color, that's what we did when I changed all the way down at the bottom to my Astia profile, or if you choose a vivid, you want to that's what this is adjusting. Lens corrections, actually I don't have any lens corrections that I'm making in this image, so this doesn't even matter. I want to keep the post-crop vignetting, grain, and dehaze. I didn't apply anything, but I want to keep these three checked, because had I applied something to them, it would have. My calibration and my process version, actually that's the last part that we did with the blues and then the Astia. And spot removal crop. I don't want any cropping, I don't want any spot removal, because there's none necessary. Now what you're going to find is once I click synchronize, this is going to go across and you'll see the bottom beginning to update. See? It's updating right now. Those small adjustments we're able to update on the whole thing. Here's the next part. If I move to another one, this preset, we're going to see the image come in. This preset, I don't like that one. Come over here. He wasn't so happy. Here we go. This preset isn't a preset like it is over here. It's just the process that I've applied to each individual image. And if we click that again, we can see that we can update it however many or however few. So now, not only have we applied one batch process to all of them, we've now also selected the elements we would want to change. So let's just say, on the Control D, select none, and then we wanted to work with this group of images, which are much more close up. Let's go ahead and let that load, and we can just as easily select all of these, and now we can sync. And once again, we can sync whatever we change. So we've got a base profile for all of them, and now if I wanted to change something in here specifically to let's say we wanted to change the colors just a little bit, and we wanted to saturate desaturate down here just a little bit, and bring the reds down just a little bit, but once again bring our highlights up some. Bingo, right there. Great. Now we can once again click sync, and we've already selected the settings, so all we have to do is synchronize. Now we're doing fine tuning. So you can go through 160 photos, fine tune them all in just a few minutes, and then select the ones that you'd like to actually publish. And that's that. So there we go. Back in grid view, Control S. Do that. So back in grid view, no, we're not going to do that right now. We can see we've got many different images, and we can just pick one and see that we didn't even come anywhere close to looking at. Let's come down here. Let's take a smile. Everybody's smiling. Give it a second. We're going to let it load up real quick. Come over here to our develop module. So we have import. Okay. And on the import, we have autotone. We've got our synchronized settings. Now here's a perfect example. The synchronized settings brought it down just a little bit in color. So we want to kind of undo that. So what we're going to do is bring our shadows out a little bit more, bring our highlights down, bring our whites up, bring our shadows in a little bit more, bring those highlights down, and we're going to equalize these whites. We're going to bring the blacks up right here in order to bring a little bit more into the focus of the photo, just like that. Good. And then we're going to come over here and adjust our color there, so our faces are bringing out just a little bit. Now, nice. Okay, great. So I can adjust the crop and everything later, but look. So from our auto tone to here. Great. Now we can take this, we can select all of these images, we can hit sync. Because we've already set it up, it's going to sync to this photo, which is currently highlighted. Synchronize. Now all of these will adjust. There they go. And as you see them adjusting as we go through, we can once again scroll down here and select these images. Okay. Make sure we've got that one highlighted, and we can sync again. Synchronize. Boom. And now you're going to see the images begin to synchronize all the way down. So there you have it. That's how you can very easily edit your batch photos. We started by coming in creating a batch edit to everything in order to get like a normalization, in order to get everything balanced. And then by selecting that and getting everything balanced, we were able to then select images or select features that we could change about each one that we could apply to each photo set within the selection. So here in particularly, we had probably 7 different looks or 7 different actual areas. And from those 7 different actual areas, we're able to edit all the photos very, very quickly. And so now we just have to pick the ones we like and then put them in a gallery so the clients can, choose their favorites and buy some. Once again, guys, I hope you found this helpful. My name is Robert Hamm with Robert Hamm Photography. Catch me over on Twitter at RobHammPhoto. You can find me on both Facebook and YouTube at /Robert Hamm Photography. And I just want to say thank you for watching.